And we're back. And for the most part, I think you solved your issue too. Okay, so for the most part, everyone has Azure up and running. It's COMP2068. It's the winter 2016 semester, advanced web programming, and it's week 2, lesson 2, part 2 of the broadcast. Again, eventually I'll put up the recording, which is a little bit better quality. Okay, so we got up and running with Azure, and so we don't need this anymore. I'm going to go back to Heroku in a second, because that's the next thing we're going to do. I want to create an app service, and again, what I want to do is, to show you this piece, is I want to go to plus, I want to go to web and mobile, like I showed you before, and web app. There are many other choices, just don't choose them. And up here, we're going to create a new app service name, and the app service name has to be unique among the entire domain, so azurewebsites.net. It can't be something that you've used before or somebody else is using, because it's live and it's worldwide, right? So if it's the same account as somebody else, if it's the same account as somebody else, it won't work, right? So let's try this out. So mine is going to be called COMP2068, and it's going to be lesson. Let's try this out. So maybe I'll make it different than yours. Lesson 2, and we'll say part 2, right? To make it something different. So it looks like there's a check mark. That means that it's good. Your subscription will be DreamSpark. You might have some other resource groups. Choose the defaults and then click create. All right? When you create this thing, it's going to do this little deployment dance up here on the right-hand corner, right, where it says deployment started. And then what this is going to do is going to create a container for your web app. Okay? There's no web app yet because we haven't put anything there, right? It's just a container, an empty space where we're going to put our files, right? So wait till it's done, and when it's done, when it says deployment succeeded, like this, it's going to go to this page, a page that looks like this, and you're going to have a couple of things. Notice how you have a URL. This is the URL that's global. That'll work across anywhere in the world, right? But you've got nothing there. Well, I want to deploy something. I want to put something up there today. So we've got our space. Leave this up for a second, and let's, just for laughs, right? Let's get into our stuff for today. I want you to bring up Visual Studio Code, right? So let's bring that up. And what we're going to do is I'm going to make a simple Node application. We're going to talk about Node today a little bit. So let's make a little Node app, and we're going to follow the kind of the example that we have online. So I'm going to open up a new window, and I'm going to go to nodejs.org. Right, nodejs.org. And under there, if you go to docs, right, about docs, there's documentation. This is where you can find a lot of the stuff. If you go to about, it tells you there's a simple way of putting together a simple server that looks like this. Okay? And by the way, this is the ES6 version, right? There's another earlier version where instead of const, you have var, right, for your JavaScript, right? So we're going to set up a little server like this. Okay, so how do we do that? So remember what we did for us setup. I want to create a new folder for my stuff, right? So let's put the one together. So I'm going to go new folder, and we're going to say COMP2068, and it'll be winter 2016, and we'll target lesson 02, if I can spell. There it is, lesson 02. Okay, this thing is empty, and when I bring back VS Code and drop this in there, you're going to get an empty folder like this. So we're just building this up from scratch again. But last time, we built a whole index.html page. This time, we're not going to build anything to do with HTML, right? Because we're making a Node package, right? We're talking about Node for the first time and what Node is and everything else, right? All right, so we need a couple of folders and everything else. One thing I do need is a very simple file called either an app.js or an index.js. Either one will be fine. Myself, I'm going to make a new file, and I'm going to call this thing index.js. All right, here's my index.js. In my index.js, I'm going to go back to my to Chrome, where I got my one of my windows there. About Node, there we go. And then I'm going to grab all this stuff the way it is, right? So notice it's a JS file, not a TS file, right? And I'm going to go back over here and paste it, right? Now there's a bit of an issue. I'll tell you right now. Const not supported across most browsers. I mean, it will support it because it's on the back end. But just for now, just to humor me, change your const to vars. Just for now. You don't have to. And I'll explain what's going on in this very mixed up looking stuff. And I'll right click here just to format. I'll format my code so it's nice and more formatted. So I'll right click and format code, right? Okay. So in order for us to make this work, okay, for me to make Node work, I need a file like this, right? And don't worry about what this is yet. Don't try and understand it. It's not important, right? No, truly. Just mimic what I'm doing for a second, right? And the next piece you have to change. See this, like these fat arrow functions? Remember, did we talk about fat arrow functions last week? Yeah. So get rid of them and replace them with function in front, like this, function. Get rid of this fat arrow function here, and we'll replace it with function. I didn't make that. That's right on the node side now. And they're really pushing us to go ES6, right? Unfortunately, not everyone understands and or knows how to do that. So, okay, so that's what your file should look like. Okay, we need another thing here in our index, alongside of our index.js as a test. This is just one of the tests we're going to do today, all right? I want you to go to your terminal or your command prompt. So I'm going to right click here, and we're going to go open in terminal or command prompt. Please do this, don't watch, all right? If you just watch, it's just not going to serve you. I'll tell you right now. So, all right, so here I am in my terminal or command prompt, depending on what machine you're using. And in here, what I want to do is I want to do a npm init. Okay, npm init. It's going to ask me for the name of my file. Notice how it's trying to put in the same name as my folder, right? Unfortunately, for the latest version of npm, I cannot have any uppercase characters in my package.json file. So this has got to change. I'm going to go COMP2068. I got to retype this piece, all lowercase, right? And you may have to do the same if you use the same naming convention, and press enter. It's version 1. I'll accept that. My description I'll leave empty. Endpoint index.js. Endpoint means how am I going to start this application, right? Index.js is the one I'm using. It detected it. I'm using that one. I'm not going to use test command or Git repository yet or keywords or anything else, right? And is this okay? Yes. And then what it does on the left-hand side, notice I have this package.json file that has all these details. This is your manifest. This tells your app, your Node app, what your main file is. Here's my main file, my index.js. So whenever I run node and then the name of your file, right, as an example, you know, that's how it's going to run. So in my index.js, I have this thing that says hello world, right? And we'll talk about request response in a second, okay? But let's think about this. How do I run this thing? So back on the command line, I'm going to use CLS if you're on a Windows machine to clear, or clear on the Mac, and press enter. And when you come up here and clears your screen, let's try this out. So if I go node, if I press node, right, and then I put index.js and press enter, you should see this. Does anyone not see this? That means you've done something wrong, right? I can stop it by going Control-C and stopping my server. So we're making a little server, right, that's local to your system. Now right now, notice it's going on port 1337. That's kind of an ugly port. The port is right here. Let's change that to something else, like 8080, right? Okay, and then if I was going to go back into my command line, this is what it looks like so far. If I go back to my command line and do the same thing, if I go node index.js and press enter, now I'm serving up on 8080. Okay, that means that if I go on my web page, right? So if I go into I'm going to choose this one, and I'm going to go make another tab here. And if I go localhost, and if I choose 8080 as a port, right, then I'm going to get hello world, right? So now what's happening is my server is responding with a hello world, okay? Anyone? Does this make sense for everybody, right? If you don't get this, and I'll explain what node is and all that stuff in a bit, right? If you don't get this, again, something went wrong, right? Who did not get this? Okay, so there's some stuff that you have to do to make it work. Remember, localhost 8080. Why is it 8080? Because I changed inside my little JavaScript file, I changed my port to 8080, right? And my host name, I left at 127.0.0.1, right? Everything else is the same. They'll be copied, right? Nothing here is different. Here's something of a problem, eh? Look at this. Have you seen these backticks before? Backtick is ES6, right? So what this is really doing, if I was going to interpret this in regular ES5, it look like this. Nope. This is ES5. This is the ES5 version. I'm just showing you so that you see what you might have just copied and pasted and you don't know what that is. I'm just going to go back to ES5 for a second so everyone knows what I'm doing. So what I'm doing is I'm saying on the console log, take this string, concatenate it with the host name, add a colon, and concatenate it with a port. So if I was to run this thing again, on the console, right? It would look like this, the same thing, right? So if you take that, if you go back to your website, and if I refresh, you should see hello world. Okay? So what am I really doing here, right? Well, in the past, when we have a web server, and this is what this course is all about, the web server is something like Apache, right? You know, or it's IIS, ASP.NET, some kind of back-end server that serves up web pages like index.html, right? And when I have a path, when I've established a path for my server and whatever, I mean, if I search for a particular web address, it just takes me there, right? All the pathing and everything else is taken care of by the Apache server, right? Well, here with Node, remember, we're doing the mean stack in this course, right? There's no pathing. You have to establish everything yourself. So imagine you're building your own custom server with your custom routing and everything else here, right? And that's what this is doing. There's no index.html page. And when I use Node, when I do a console command, it doesn't go to the web page. A console command appears on the console, right? Inside your terminal window or your command prompt. So just a couple of differences, right? All right, we have no code hinting here whatsoever. And how do I get code hinting for Node? How do we get code hinting for everything else that we did last week? Who remembers? People, one person, please say the word. Yes? TypeScript. We use TypeScript for getting code hinting. Otherwise, we get no code hinting. We don't know what the hell these are, right? Notice that they're any's, and the host name is a string, and the port, but we don't know what these things do. HTTP is an any. That's bad, right? I don't want to use HTTP as an any. So let's change this file name. So we're going to go right-click, and we're going to change the name, rename it. All right, we're going to rename TS for TypeScript, and press Enter. And immediately we have an error, right? We have require, and it says don't know what that is, right? Because we don't know what this foreign library is. So what do I do to get type definition libraries for TypeScript? How do I get that? Tell me. You're hissing like a snake. You're saying TSD is what it is, right? So we have to use TSD to get that. So we're going to go to the terminal, and we're going to stop any running server. And what I want to do is in the command prompt here, I want to say TSD install node -- save. And when I do that, it's going to go to the web. It's going to connect and grab my Node file and create my typings. Here's my typings for Node, right? There it is. Okay, cool, right? I got my Node and it says require and it doesn't find it. That's okay. Because remember, I have to also set up a couple things for TypeScript. That's the first thing. I got to get some type definition libraries. And then I got to set my tsconfig.json file. Remember this piece? So I'm going to right click And I'm going to do a new file, and it's going to be called a tsconfig.json file, right? And in my tsconfig.json file, it's going to tell me my compiler options. So I'm going to kind of open up a bracket and then press Control space. And then I'm going to go down to compiler options. And then I want a target. So choose target, ES5, right? That's the right target, not ES6. Because most browsers do not support ES6, right? And next is module, right? Which we're going to choose, which is common.js. That's correct. And one more, which is our map file that we're going to create a source map file, which is true every time we transpile. So we need that file. What else do we need? If you're going to, whenever you want to transpile with Visual Studio Code, there's more than two ways to do it, but the main two ways to do it are, one, I want to transpile by clicking Control-Shift-B on the Windows machine, or Command-Shift-B on the Mac, right? And when I do that, if I press Control-Shift-B or Command-Shift-B, I get this task runner, right? Configure my task runner. Okay, and I got to click Configure Task Runner. All right? I want to get rid of, first of all, this pane here. Get rid of all this, right? We did this last week, yeah? And get rid of all this. And get rid of all this stuff, right? So I'm just gonna kind of close up this thing right here so we can see everything. I made it really big, like 20, so you guys can see this stuff a lot clearer. I want to get rid of all this. This is just the first setup. When I first set up a TypeScript project, right? Gonna do all this and get rid of this. And save. So this file, right, exists inside our .vs code file right here in this folder, right? So this is the folder structure you should see at this point. Does anyone have a different folder structure than this one? Yes. What's your different folder structure?
I messed up at the start, so I'm behind.
Hooterus strangle. No, I'm joking. Okay, well, I'll come back to you. Maybe Ari, you can help them out, right? All right, so if you notice here, you get your version, you got your command, you got your isShell command is true, all this stuff. Remember what we did last time, we cannot transpile from TypeScript into JavaScript unless your TypeScript is available to you on your command line. And again, for those people who had, this is the other option, other problem people had. Right click here, and we're gonna go to open in terminal, right? And to test out that it's working, you have to put tsc space -v. And you should have something like TypeScript 1.7.5 if you've loaded it up properly. If your TypeScript version is 1.0.3 or something weird like that, you'll never be able to transpile using Visual Studio Code, right? You can do it on the command line, but with Visual Studio Code, it will fail, all right? So you need to have this version of, or 1.5 and higher, I think it is, of TypeScript in order for you to transpile with Visual Studio Code. Does anyone not have this or something like this? That's a problem. That's like it's like a Git problem again, right? That's the level of problem we're talking about. Okay? You're okay? Good. Now that I know my TypeScript is the right version, right, and I'm good, I should be able to do Command-Shift-B on the Mac or Control-Shift-B on Windows to transpile my TS file into a JS file and a map file. All right, let's try this out. So Command-Shift-B, and everything goes well. I've got two more files. I've got a js.map file, and I've got a JS file, which looks like this. Okay? Let's go back to my TS file. Hey, look, my TS file is fixed. I don't have my weird error anymore, right? Why? Because HTTP, this module, which is part of the Node package, right, it's built into Node, right? And notice when I hover over HTTP, I still get any, which means I got no code hinting. How do I get code hinting with Node, right? And I'm not going to use the var keyword anymore. The proper keyword to use for us to get code hinting for Node.js and its libraries is import. So do this. Change your var to import, please. And press save. Now, when I do that, and if I transpile for a second, right? I'm finished transpiling. If I hover over HTTP, I get something else, right? It is HTTP now is an alias for require HTTP. I'm actually taking in, when I use require, what it's doing is I'm going to that module and I'm literally including it inside my file. Remember that there is no index.html that ties all of our JavaScript together anymore in Node, right? There's no manifest that we used to have, right, to tie things together. So the only way that it can tie modules together is using require.js or require. And we use the require method, right, to attach modules into our main manifest file, which for us is index.js, or in our case, index.ts. Okay, cool. So if I was going to try HTTP like before, right, let's just go down here and just retype just the stuff down there. If I start typing HTTP dot, I get all kinds of code hinting now, which is what I want, right, with TypeScript. An example of that, if I know I'm going to create my server, I can go create server, right? And notice how if I press open bracket, I get what the server is looking for. I need my request listener, right, function, that's what it is. And with a request response, look at what I get here. I need a request and a response. So how does the server work? So I go up to any web page. I'm on a web page, right? And I'm looking for apple.com or whatever I want. I'm going to go to that web page. So what am I doing? I'm sending a request. My client sends a request to the server to say, give me your index.html page. Okay? That's my GET request. And then what's going to happen is the response for that is going to come back out in the form of, here's my web page. That's what's happening. So the server gets a series of GET requests from the user when all I'm doing is reading the website. If I want to just read the website, it's a GET request. When I go into a form, right, a form, and I activate the form, I submit the form, it's a POST request from a server perspective. So I post it, right? So it's like a GET, and you're still going to get a response, right, from the server, right? But it's not a read. It's a post where I'm actually physically writing some information back to the server, right? A read, all I'm doing with a read is grabbing stuff from the server. It's coming one way, towards me, right? A post, I'm sending information to the server, and it's making a round trip back to me. Okay, so post and get. So when I establish, this situation, there's almost like this idea for this request response system. Here's my request. I need to get a response, right? So I need to send in, HTTP server is listening for an object, and we're going to get into JavaScript today because JavaScript objects is the main thing that kills everybody. We talked about it a little bit last week, but I want to really get into it with you guys this week, right? I need to, what it's looking for as a requirement for my parameter, this first parameter is a request listener object. That's what it needs. It doesn't need a single parameter. I need an object, right? I don't have an object, so I got to send it a function. All right, and the function that I'm sending it, look down here, is an anonymous function. It's an unnamed function. This is what freaks people out. They look at it and they go, I don't get that, and it's really ugly. I don't understand what's happening. Don't worry, don't panic, right? So we put in the function. So we say function, right? And in there we're going to put in, look what it's looking for again. It's giving me code hinting again when I put my function, right? It's going to say, okay, I need a request. And what am I listening for? It's got to be an HTTP, right, incoming message. So if I start typing http.incoming message, that's the request, that's the type. And for my response, right, it's a http.server response. That's the type. By the way, it's nothing wrong with putting over here, instead of an incoming message, you could also put in, as a type, server request. That would do fine too, by the way. Okay, now we're missing some stuff. We need some curly braces, right? And these curly braces tell us this is the meat of our callback function, right? And then I can simply put a semicolon here if I want to, right? What they've done down below is they've done something called object chaining, right? What you're going to see, right? They actually attach an additional method to this method, right? Which is the listen method, which is basically say, hey, create your server and then listen on a specific port. So I can do that. I can say, let's do some object chaining. So we're going to insert dot. Notice I have my options, and I'm going to say listen. And with my listen method, it also gives me some other things. I can listen on a port. Look at the options. Port, host name, right, and so on, right? These are the things that I can do. And some kind of listener function again. Look, this is my listener function, right, that can actually output to the console, right? So I'm getting my code hinting. So I need a port, some kind of host name, and some kind of function that I can use, a callback function, anonymous callback function that I can do something to the console. And then I can finish. So that's really this is my format for my create server, right? So HTTP, again, to recap, is a module that is native to Node, right? You don't have to load any additional modules. It's part of Node. Once you load Node up, HTTP is part of it. And there's other ones too we're going to talk about. All right, these ones, let's fix this part. But this part's all messed up too, right? So I'm going to copy this one, or cut it and put it up here because it should be up here. And we used var hostname. Well, what's hostname? It's a string. Let's explicitly say it's a string, just to help us. We're using TypeScript, so might as well, right? And our port, here's our port. It's a number, right? So hostname is a string, port is a number, right? And so far, so good. All right, cool. In my listen, I can copy this piece again because I just kind of typed it last time anyway, so I might as well put it in here. And over here inside my HTTP request response, let's start typing it, and I'll show you what you get for this. If you've created the proper typing up here, then when I go res for response and I press dot, I get a bunch of code hinting again, right? Because I've explicitly said the type in TypeScript, I'm going to get code hinting. Ladies and gentlemen, if you do this without, you get nothing. Yes? Yeah, I will. Just give me 1 sec. So I'm going to get rid of the other stuff in a second because the top, all it is this. Okay? So if I go response, and then if you notice, I can do right head. So if I start typing right head, it tells me, it's just the code hinting is there. And now it tells me what I need. I need a status code. Status code 200 means everything is okay. What's status code 404 mean? You should know that one, right? Page not found, right? 404, right? Now there's other status codes we're going to explore in this course, right? But we're going to give a code of 200 saying if you can get here, code of 200, and now we're returning back an object. Look what it says here. A reason phrase that we can send back a string, right? And here's the reason phrase, or some kind of headers. That's the other option. And notice the question mark means an optional, right? I'm actually not responding with a reason phrase. I'm responding with the header. And this is my header right here. A header object, right? And the object is going to be written in object notation, which is this. In curly braces is object notation. And I'm going content type, just like I typed before, content, dash type, right? There it is. And then colon. And if I start typing text, right, if I put plain, it should start hearing that. All right, cool. So that's my content type. And then the second one is res response end. So I'm going to end my response, right, with a hello world that's going to go out to the browser. All right, so I'm going to respond end. And then when I open it up, it says, what do you want to respond with? And there's 5 different signatures. Look, if I click this, I can click different signature options because of TypeScript, right? If I don't know what it is, notice I can respond with a string, which is what I'm going. I can respond with other things as well, even a callback function, right? Let's just respond with a string. So we're going to go in there, and we're going to say hello world. Here's something. Single quotes and double quotes are all interchangeable in this particular example. Okay, and I'm going to kill. I've done everything. I've just redone everything here. And I'm going to go up here and do this. So it looks almost identical, but I've got all my code hinting right here, ready to go, right? Now if I transpile, so Control-Shift-B, Command-Shift-B on the Mac, right? Then what it's going to do is let me just bring up the JavaScript side. So I'm going to split screen, and I'm going to use the JavaScript side to show you this is what the JavaScript side looks like. It's almost identical. The only difference is you don't have any typing, A, and my import turned into a var, right? Because JavaScript doesn't care about typing. Questions around this? Ladies and gentlemen, it's an important distinction of what we've done when I import something. When I import, I get the entire object with TypeScript. I'm able to get type hinting, or code hinting if you will, right? Okay, so I've got my import statement, and I've got my my little server, and I want it to say hello world, right? And it's my first, this is your first Node application that you've made, right? And there's nothing else you need. This is just the basics. Notice I have my typings in here, my node, and everything else. And you know what? I want to save this up online in its own little folder. Let's do the GitHub piece now, all right? So how do I do this GitHub stuff? Well, if you have GitHub working, then in here, on your in your icons in Visual Studio Code, you should be able to do Initialize Git Repository. If I click Initialize Git Repository, it initializes, it sends that initial repository, so it's like a Git init, right? If I hover over changes and click the plus, it takes all of these files and puts them on this in the staging area, which I like to think of as like limbo, right? It kind of puts them in a temporary holding place, put it that way, right? And we still haven't made a commit. All I've done is staged a bunch of files to be committed. It's like before I commit you to the insane asylum, I put you in front of the doors. That's what I'm doing, right? I don't know if that's a great example, but you're there, you're bound, right? You're in front of the doors. I'm going to put you in the insane asylum, but you're not ready to go in yet. I have to name you, like prisoner 13456 or whatever it is, right? Until I name you, you can't go inside the insane asylum. Okay? Sorry. And that's like making a commit, all right? So let's go in here, and I'm going to name the commit. This is a snapshot of the current state of all my files, right? So it's going to be by best practice or convention, it's initial commit, right? Or first commit, whatever you feel like doing. One of those two. And then I'm going to click this check mark. All of those changes that were in the staging area are now committed, and they're in an invisible folder, a hidden folder inside your project called .git. That's where they exist. All of those changes you made. They exist, but they're just hidden. Now, I can't go here and push because I haven't established my remote. I have to do that next. So I'm going to go up online. I'm going to go to GitHub. Let's do it together. And you're going to make a new repository here on GitHub. I'm going to put it on Georgian. And we're going to make a new one called COMP2068 Winter 2016. And it's going to be lesson 2. And then I'm going to click Create. What this is going to do is it's going to give me my URI that I need for my remote. This is my remote URI right here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go into my terminal, and I'm going to if I'm in the right space, paste it and press Enter. And then I'm going to do the last piece, which is git push -u origin master. And when I do that, it's going to go into my files and push everything up on GitHub. All right, let's take a look and see that. Notice that I did not include a gitignore file, right? I don't have a gitignore file at this time. I will include it later, right? I don't need it because everything I have here it's okay, right? And it's not that big. Okay, cool. I have a repository. Now I want to deploy it on Azure, right? Which one? Oh, the Git Add Remote?
Yeah.
Well, that's going to be whatever yours is, right? It's going to, if you look in your Git repository, it's going to say it right there. If you create a new Git repository. For those people who don't remember the Git Add Remote, I've created a couple of test repos, if I'm not wrong. Let me see if I got one here. Maybe I'll make a test repo for you. Here, I'll make a test repo. So I'm going to make a new repo under my Georgian College, and we're just going to call it test repo. Test repo. There we go. And if you look there, this is what you see. This is the add remote, but you're going to get your own. This is what it's going to look like. But this git remote add is going to be something that you get from your repository. Your repository is going to be different than mine. If you put this in, you don't have access to my repository, right? So it won't work. So test repo.git is what you're going to put in there, or whatever your repo is called. Okay, cool. So now that you've done that and you've connected your repo, now my repository, if I look up on Georgian College, I have this COMP2068 repository. I want to link this one to the cloud, right? There are some differences. This is not a regular website. It's a Node.js website. So in the past, I'm just going to put it out there to you guys, right? We had issues deploying directly to Azure, right? Because Azure didn't know what to look for when it came to this type of repository, right? It's just FYI. So if you do see this thing, and if it doesn't work for you this first time, It's because of that. We'll fix it. All right, so now I'm going to go back to Google Hangouts. No, I don't want to touch Google Hangouts. I want to go back to my Azure here. Here it is. And notice how I have my repository space. I've just called it up online, COMP2068 lesson 2 part 2.azurewebsites.net, but it's empty. I want to do continuous deployment, and the way to do that is on the right where it says settings for your Azure website you just created, right? Scroll down until you get something called publishing. Publishing, right? Under publishing, go to continuous deployment. I'm waiting for you guys. Who's not with me? Okay, what's wrong? Do I have to go back? Where do I have to go back?
I got lost at the when you were in Visual Code
Uh-huh.
and getting to Git.
All right. How did I do it? Well, what I did here, let's do it all again, right? I'm going to delete my repository up online. I'll just delete it, right? If you guys are really that behind, I have no problem with that. I'm going to go in here. How do I delete a repository? I go in, I go to settings, right? I go all the way down to this danger zone, right? And I click delete this repository, and I copy the name of the repository. Please don't do this unless you absolutely know you can live without it, by the way, especially if it's like something like critical you have nowhere else. That'll be bad, right? It's gone. You put it in here and you press, let's try that again. You copy this, come on Tom, put it in here and press, I understand the consequences, delete this repository and don't bother me again, all right? Okay, cool, it's gone. So there's no repository. And now in order for me to wipe out my Git repository here, because there's a little Git folder somewhere in the back end, on the Mac, I've got to go in here and go rm-rf, right, and .git. Please be careful what you say .rf to, because you can wipe out your entire Mac if you're not careful, right? Bam, so that's gone. So there's no more Git repository. It's gone. I'm going to start from scratch. If you're on the Windows machine, you can go to your project folder. If you see a hidden .git folder, if you want to start over, delete that .git folder, and you'll start off fresh like me, right? You can also do it from command line, but it's a different command. Okay, let's go in there. So I'm going to start it off again. In Visual Studio Code, if it's running properly, and if I go to this icon, right, I see this Initialize Git Repository. If you don't see Initialize Git Repository, if you see something like you need to set up Git, something's not right with your system. All right? I'm going to click it, which initializes my Git repository, and it sends a message to the console like Git space init. It's exactly the same as that kind of command. I'm going to hover over changes, and I'm going to go here and press the plus button. If I go down here and press the plus button, I only add individual files to my staging area, right? I want to add everything to the staging area, so I go across to changes and to do that. This makes all your files that are in your repository right now green, like this, which is A for add, M for modify, right? And so on. Okay, now I need a message, like I said, right? Staged, but you know the prisoner's in front of the door to the insane asylum, and he needs a name, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Our name is commit, some kind of commit message. We're going to say initial commit, right? And when we do that, we press the checkbox or the check mark here, and look what it says when I hover over commit staged, and there's a command enter on the Mac or probably control enter on the PC, my guess. And when I do that, it sends everything to be committed. All right, cool. I can't kind of control this or connect with my repo because I don't have a remote repo. I got to create one in GitHub. So let's do that piece now. So on GitHub, I got to go up here and make a new repository, right? For those people who haven't done this, make sure it's in the right place, and call it whatever, some unique name. COMP2068 winter 2016, and this is like lesson 02, maybe part 2. We'll even add another part to it. There we go. And then press create repository. When I do that, it gives me my URI, this git remote add origin I need to copy. So I copy all this, copy it, go back to my terminal or command prompt, and then paste it, enter. And then in my command prompt, I'm going to put in the next line, git push -u for unconditional origin master, and press enter. When I do that, you might get a please log into your Git. Give me your login credentials. You can set that up so you never ask you again. By the way, if you Google it, say how do I not have to log in every time when I go to Git. If you Google it, it'll give you some hints on what to do, so you never have to do that again. And now that I've done that, if I go back up here and refresh, I can see that I've got everything here. Push, git space push minus u, origin, master. It's actually on the website. If you go to the website, it tells you what to do. All of the commands for the command line are on GitHub. All right. The only difference in GitHub, if I was going to go back to my test repo that I made, which is right here for your reference, right? If you go to Georgian College, the github.com/Georgian College/test repo, you can see what you normally get, something like this. The difference is I'm not adding a README file, and I'm not just adding one file. I'm doing git add dot. What if I was going to do everything from the command line, right? Dot means add everything. Now in this case, I used everything through the Visual Studio Code tool, and I didn't do everything through command line. Okay. Okay, are we all together now? Finally, anyone not with me? Is that a wave of the hand over there, or are you good? That's you, yeah, you in the corner. Are you good or not? That's a wave of the hand.
Yeah.
All right. Who can help our gentleman in the corner? Anybody willing to come over and help him? What's your name, my friend?
Josh.
Josh. Ari's going to help Josh. Thank you, Ari. Yes. What the hell? Oh, sure. Yeah, of course. Of course you can. Yeah. Yes, of course. Here's that command line. It's a bunch of gobbledygook now because I've. Yeah. So it's this piece here. So if I highlight it for you, just so you can see it, it looks like this. I did my remote add. This is the first one.
Yeah, I got that one.
And then the push, git push minus u origin master, minus u for unconditional. Yes.
When I did my push, I didn't put my username and password.
Yes, it would always ask for your username and password unless yeah, it wouldn't do it for me because I've already fixed that problem, right? You can fix that problem by Googling it. If you say, don't want to put my username and password into, how do I not put in my username and password for Git? It'll tell you what to do, all right? There's actually a global command you have to input. Is everyone else okay? Can I continue? All right, good. It looks like I can. Yay. And maybe we'll take a break at some point, eh? Like after this. And then we'll get to the second piece. All right, so we've got our Git. We pushed everything to stuff. Now I want to deploy on Azure. And I have my little Azure stuff somewhere. I don't know where I put it. There it is. And I've gone here to Azure, and on the right where it says publishing, so I've got my little, everyone's got their new Azure site, right? You followed me and made this with me, right? And if you did, if you pressed plus and created your web app and named it, you can go to something called continuous deployment under publishing. Click that. It's going to come up with configure some settings, right? Configure some settings. And what you want to do here is you want to click on configure required settings. It's going to take you to what do you want to choose as a source. Now there's a lot of sources, a lot of cool sources too. Visual Studio Online, OneDrive, a local Git repository, which to me doesn't make any sense, right? I'd rather deploy from GitHub, right? So I'm going to click GitHub. All right, under GitHub, you're going to see some other choices. You may be asked for authorization at this point. Hey, do you authorize Microsoft and Azure to access your GitHub account? What is your GitHub account? You put it in and you put in your username and password. It's going to ask you that all right now, okay? Once you put that in, I'm going to choose actually I'll wait for you guys to do that. Go ahead, because it'll take some time for you guys to verify, like a few seconds. And then I'll be ahead of you, and then you're going to say, stop, go back. And then I won't be able to go back, because I can't erase this one so easy. All right? So again, I went to publishing, continuous deployment, and under continuous deployment I chose, I wanted to choose GitHub as an option, and if I scroll to the left, it'll show me everything that I've done. And underneath there, you might say my authorization. That will be your name, the name of your GitHub account, as an example. And now underneath that, you'll see your organization or your account, right? And underneath here, if I can choose which organization. Obviously, we're choosing Georgian for me. You won't have that option because I have more than one organization in my GitHub account. You won't have that option. But underneath that, you will have this choose project. So choose your project. I'll come back in a second. Choose your project, and I'm going to choose what? Right? COMP2068, Winter 2016, Lesson 2, Part 2. Right? And I'm going to be the master branch. That's what I want. I don't want to change that. So now, what's your question?
I don't have an organization.
You won't, because I have an organization. I have more than one organization. You might just have your name. So click on that, whatever you have.
Okay.
And then you should go and choose your project.
Yeah, that's
And you're going to choose the master branch. Are you with me? Who's not with me? I see some faces that are like, I don't quite understand what you're doing yet. It's okay, don't worry about understanding it. Okay, cool. Right? And now I'm going to press OK. When I press OK, it says setting up continuous deployment. This little dance it's doing on the corner, right? Da-da-da. And it says setting up successful. Notice how down here there's no deployments found. Give it a chance, right? It's going to go out and try and figure out what you want. And now, as you notice, it's spinning, right? That spinning is a good sign. It's trying to figure out what I want to do. It's building my deployment. Hopefully, at this stage, Microsoft and Azure, they understand what a node application is, right? Because I have a package.json file. It should detect my node application. Otherwise, we're going to do some looking up and fix this problem, because otherwise you won't deploy anything online. Okay, let it finish. It'll take some time. Good. See where it says active deployment? This is a good thing. If you've got active deployment, who's got active deployment? That's good. If you've got active deployment, that means that you're live online. Okay, let's check this out. So I'm going to go back here, and notice this is my URL. I'm going to take this and open it up a new tab. And when I open up in a new tab, I should see hello world. But why am I getting this? You do not permission to view this directory or page. Why? Anybody? Well, let's refresh and see what happens. So first of all, this error is the error that I was talking about, right? This is the error, right? So why am I getting this error? How come? How come? Right? Well, if I go back, let's take a look at my repository to understand what I'm doing, right? Let's refresh and see what my repository is. Oh, not this one. This one, right? Cool. Well, I've got my index.ts page. I've got my index.js page. You know what? I don't know why it's not working, right? Well, here's a hint. Let's test it, first of all, locally, right? Which we didn't do. So I'm going to clear this up, and I'm going to test it locally. And the way I'm going to do that is node space, and then the name of what I'm testing, right? So if I go node space and my name of the file index.js, I have an endpoint, and I know that it's going to run on 8080. But I have a problem. Can Microsoft work on 8080? Or can it work on localhost 127.0.0.1? So that's why it's not working, right? It can't work on localhost 0.0.1, and it can't, and the reason for that is because 127.0.0.1, and it can't work on port 8080, and that's why Microsoft's giving me an error. I've got to provide it another port and another optional location for it to pop out its stuff, which means we need a slightly more complex app. Okay, we can get hints of what we need, by the way, and this is why I did this, so we can get another deployment going on, right? I can get hints of what I need in another module that we can look at later on called Express. So let's take a look at Express.js. So under Express.js, we can click on the Getting Started. And I want to click my Hello World. Notice how it has some other options here, like app listen and so on. This would also fail, right? This require, notice it's almost exactly the same, but it would fail as well. There's something called, otherwise, Unexpressed Generator. If I go to the Express Generator here for a second, you can generate a whole slew of files that we're going to be doing later on. Well, for hints of what to do, they actually give you, like for example, if I type in, deploy node app to Azure, right, as an example. If I do that and it says here, Microsoft has some really cool hinting here, create a node app for Azure, and it tells you step by step how to do a hello Azure, right, kind of thing, right? We created the web app. We just followed this little thing, right? We went, created this, web app name. They just made Contoso 1013 or whatever. All that was good. We chose our web app name. This is something else they did, web apps, right? And then we have our FTP and our URL for the app and so on, right? And then down here it says set up the continuous deployment, which we've done. We set up continuous deployment. We chose, now they chose local Git, we chose GitHub, it doesn't matter, it's the same thing. And then after it did its, now they set up some deployment credentials, which we don't have to do. because we just did it with GitHub. So everything seems to be the exact same, right? But the problem is that, see this, process env port? That's what we need for our port. Our port can't be 1337 and it can't be localhost 127.0.0.1. So we need to put in the port space process.env.port. So let's do that. So grab this. And we're going to go back to our Visual Studio Code. And in our port, so right here, I'm going to put that in there, right? Or, so double pipe 8080. Double pipe in JavaScript means or, right? Like it does in other languages. And what process is, if I was to actually look at process and hover over it, it's a global that belongs to Node.js. It's part of the Node.js application framework, right? Environment, process.environment, and then the port, any port. That's one cool thing. Hostname is another problem, right? Hostname is a real issue, right? Notice how in our example, and I'm going to wait till you guys copy this out. So we're making some changes to make it so it's compatible with online. Because the way I've made it before, it's not compatible online. It's only for my local testing, right? I can't test remotely with 127.0.0.1. It will not work, right? So I got to get rid of this somehow, or somehow use the environment variables that match with the production version of my code. This is my local development version, right? How do I do that? Well, here's some hints. Notice how I have my port, I have my HTTP, I have my port, here's my port, and then I create my server, right? And then I pass in my port, but I don't pass in localhost 127.0.0.1. Okay, that's cool. So let's try that out. So let's go back into this and get rid of, right, my requirement for my hostname. And will it still work? That's my question to you. So just kind of do listen on port blah 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 with a callback function, right? So I don't need this anymore, right? We're just kind of getting rid of it. Don't worry if you don't understand. If you're like, I don't get it, right? Don't worry about that. And what we're going to do here is this console.log that normally would print off, right, which is my port, I want to get rid of it because we really don't care about listening on, put something on the Azure console. Because that means it'll go somewhere on an Azure VM somewhere, right? We don't care about that, so we're just going to do one of these. It's optional. iCallback function is optional to run so that I can get some feedback on the console. I don't have to do that. Okay, I'm going to save that. All right, so I've saved it, and I want to transpile it, right? Because otherwise it won't make a change to my JavaScript file. No errors on the TypeScript side, that's a good sign, right? And if I was to look and split screen it and go to my JavaScript side, it looks like it's good too. Okay, cool. So everything's working here. I've updated it, but I've got 3 changes, and I've got to upload them to GitHub. Remember, we're using the continuous deployment. So when I upload to GitHub, it automatically transfers things to Azure. I don't have to do that again. I don't have to make that chain anymore, right? That path, that deployment path or whatever is made. It's done. So let's try this out. So I'm going to go up here to GitHub. I'm going to add everything to the all these changes to the staging area, right? Notice they're all modified instead of an A for add, right? And here I'm going to say updated index.js. I'm going to click the checkbox, and I'm going to click the ellipses this time, and I'm going to click push, because I can do that right through my Visual Studio Code, because I'll set up my remote connection through my command line, and then click push. When I click push, it goes out, pushes everything, and now if I go back to Azure, right, and I want to find this little application I made, and again I'm going to go back to over here, right? This is my simple application. And if I refresh, right, and when it deploys properly, I should have another, some other kind of thing. Sometimes what we need to do when we do a continuous deployment, and notice there's a second one. Look, here's a second continuous deployment. We've done one. Here's my initial one, and here's my second one, my updated index.js file. Right? Okay, we're all golden, except this thing doesn't seem to still work. Let's see what the other problem would be, right? So one thing I need to do sometimes is I need to run this thing in incognito mode, right? Because what it does is it caches my results. So let's try this anyway. So I open it up and I go back here and I don't have access. I do see this. I do see my project name, but I don't have access to run this page. Well, let's make sure that it's not something to do with caching. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to open a new incognito window and populate it in there to make sure there's nothing to do with caching, right? And it's not. So I know that because I'm not getting anything else. So some other problem is going on. Notice how we're not getting any code hinting here. So I'm not getting any kind. If I go to inspect, remember I said the visual that on the console we don't get anything, and it says the server responded with a status of 403 forbidden. That's the error we're getting, right? Failed to load resource, right? And what I'm trying to do here, if I click on this, it says you do not have permission to view the directory page. So somehow, right, what I'm trying to do is get to something that I'm not allowed to get to. I'm not seeing the website or the endpoint that I'm looking at, right? Just saying. Those are the kind of the one thing that I can't do. Let's go back to the drawing board. So I've got this piece done. I'm writing hello world. Everything else is good. I've got my request response. I've got my process environment port or port 8080, right? That's what's writing in here. And let's see the difference between what I've got and my what I had before, right? So I'm going to go back over here, kill this, and look at my create a node website. And you see this is the copy. I'm copying the following code, right? Everything's the same, right? 200, here's my hello world, and this is my port. I'm listening to my port. Open my command line. Let's test it out, and I should get something like this. I did my git init. It tells you everything to do here, and then I push to master, right? Kind of stuff. It creates a remote connection, and then when I browse, right, I can see hello world. That's what it says. There is no additional changes, right? Notice that there isn't anything different that is up here from a continuous deployment. So it's not something that looks like we did physically. So let's take a short break, and when we come back, we'll see how we're going to fix this problem. And we need a short break because it's 3 o'clock and we only have till 4 together, and I still got 2 tools to give you that are required for the course. Right? Short break, and we'll come back. Yes.